everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this video we'll be continuing our Canada and Alaska series by looking at our road trip and in particular our time in Golden and Kamloops. I'll talk through how we spent our time in the area with some of the things you can get up to and some top tips along the way. We began our road trip with 3 nights in Calgary, followed by 3 more in Canmore, which I talked through in our last few vlogs. Then we moved on to Golden, where we spent 2 nights, Kamloops for 1 night, and then finally on to Vancouver. If you're driving from the Banff area across to Vancouver, there are a couple of different routes you can take. The most direct route will take you through Kamloops via Golden along the Trans-Canada Highway. Or if you've gone up to Jasper, you'll come down Highway 5 until you reach Kamloops and then on to Vancouver. This makes Kamloops a popular overnight spot to break the journey, and we'll talk about our stay here later in the vlog. Our original planned route was from Banff to Jasper with 2 nights there, then drive down to Kamloops. However, due to wildfires around Jasper, we had to rearrange and instead spent 2 nights in Golden. Golden was somewhere we'd briefly looked at, particularly for the Skybridge here, but had discounted it as it was a little too far out of the way for our original plans. When we had to rearrange from Jasper, it was a pretty easy decision to book in here instead, and it was just a question of finding a place to stay. We had to move quickly because hotels were booking up with everybody forced to rearrange their plans. We used Trailfinders to book this part of the road trip and they were excellent in keeping us up to date with hotel closures and getting us a full refund quickly. We found a Holiday Inn with good reviews and a decent price. We love the IHG group and are part of their ambassador club and look to stay in one of these whenever we can. We knew we'd be getting a decent place to stay for a few nights, so we booked in at the Holiday Inn Express Golden Kicking Horse. It came to around $990 for the 2 nights, which equated to £560, which felt a little bit pricey but probably okay in the circumstances. We arrived here at the hotel after a busy day driving from Canmore via the Columbia Icefields, which we talked about in our last vlog. The hotel is on the edge of town, just off the highway, so not bang in the middle, but for 2 nights when we were planning to be out and about, it worked just fine. The drive out here is lovely. From Lake Louise you head further into the mountains along the highway as it winds through beautiful scenery. You come down into Golden and the hotel is really easy to find with plenty of parking. The hotel itself is a pretty standard Holiday Inn, a really good reception area with a restaurant where you can enjoy your free breakfast. The service was great and the staff were able to recommend some local places to eat as well as a few takeaway options. We made use of the pool while we were here, which was pretty good. It had a decent sized indoor pool with a large hot tub and seating area, and the kids had a blast in here. Our room was a 2-queen suite with sofa bed room, as this was all that they had left that would sleep us all, and as usual it was very nice. The room was nice and big with 2 double beds, a seating area and a mini kitchen area with a microwave and a fridge, so really everything you could need. The bathroom was a decent size with a shower over the bath and everything was clean and well maintained, so it was perfect for us. We were by the elevator so had a little noise every so often, but nothing that kept us awake. Having had a long day of driving, we decided we'd just chill in the room with a takeaway for dinner. The hotel recommended a pizza place called Red Tomato, which did the trick for around $60, so this is worth a shout if you want something quick and easy. We then basically had a day and a half to spend in Golden before we had to head off to Kamloops. The town sits on the Kicking Horse River, so one of the main draws here is the river and different activities you can do around this. One of the things we had planned in Jasper was whitewater rafting, so it fits perfectly to do this in Golden instead. There are a couple of different companies you can do this with. We did some research and went for alpine rafting, which had recently merged with the Glacier Raft Company. There are different grades of rapids, with the higher the number the rougher the water and the more difficult to ride they are. The rapids we had booked in Jasper with Malign Adventures were grade 2 and were billed as a family friendly run. The rapids in Golden that we booked on were grade 1 and 2, so a little bit tamer. We've not done anything like this before, but wanted to try something different and wanted a family-friendly starter session to give this a go, so we felt this fit perfectly. The session we booked on cost $420 or around £240 for the 4 of us, and was scheduled to last 3.5 hours with an hour and a half on the water. We met at the site just off the highway, 5 minutes from our hotel, for 9 AM. It was a bit of a dreary, damp day, but then again we were going to get wet anyway, so it didn't make that much difference. You're told to arrive in your swimsuit and bring a change of clothes and towels etc. to keep in your car. You're given a safety briefing and talk, and then you're given your wetsuit and warm clothing to put on in the changing rooms. For us, with it being a colder day, we all had full body wetsuits, a thermal jacket, a fleece jumper, raincoat and boots, all provided as part of the package. All of this helped to keep us warm, although it does get a little bit uncomfortable after a while, as you may expect. Then everyone has a life jacket and helmet, and you're put onto school buses to transport you down to the river. You leave any belongings in the car, including phones and cameras. I think you were allowed to take a GoPro, but it's easy to lose overboard and hard to manage when you're trying to paddle, so we decided we'd just get a copy of the guide's footage instead. The transfer down to the river takes around 20 minutes down through the forest to the boats. We then had another more detailed talk about how the trip would work, and we were then assigned our rafts. It was now that we wished we'd brought insect repellent, as there were tons of mosquitoes here in the forest, so top tip is to give yourself a good spray, as we all got covered in bites. The rafts seat around 8 people, and we were paired with another family of 4, 2 to a row, with the guide sat on a raised seat at the back doing most of the work. Everyone has a paddle, although the kids were sat closer to the middle to begin with when the water was roughest. Our guide was fantastic, explaining how and when to paddle, chatting to everyone, explaining all about the area, and generally made it a really fun trip. To be honest with this tour, because the water wasn't really that rough, we didn't need to do a lot of paddling. A lot of it was just floating along, enjoying the scenery. The best bit was probably the first run where it was the roughest, and I think that was the only grade 2 section of our run. This was the part that we all most enjoyed and where Greg got absolutely drenched. But after this, the rest were pretty calm really, and on reflection, we probably would have enjoyed a slightly rougher run the whole way, so maybe grade 2. Of course, it's dictated by the river itself though, but hopefully this gives you a guide on what to expect here. We felt completely safe the whole way down. The kids had a middle rope to hold onto, and we had an outer rope to hold, and you kind of wedge your feet under the edges of the raft to stabilise yourself. There was never really any danger of falling out or anything like that. The scenery around is absolutely beautiful, and we spotted a couple of eagles on the way. It's possible to sometimes see bears and other wildlife too, and it's a stunning backdrop in the mountains. Later on, you do get the chance for a quick dip in the river where the water slows a little. It was pretty freezing water, so we didn't go for this, but the opportunity is there if you wanted to. After around an hour and a half on the river, you finish by tying up on the bank and taking a short walk up to a small waterfall. This was pretty cool, but involves climbing over some really slippery rocks, so hang back if you don't fancy this, as you then make a short walk along the bank to the camp area. This is where you get your lunch. It was hot dogs, burgers, salad and chips, or crisps for those of you from the UK. There's also some hot chocolate to warm you up a little. The food was okay, it was really basic. It did the trick, but we also topped up with a lot of snacks back in the car after the bus journey back to the main site. We had our photo taken down at the camp, and we asked about buying the photos taken on the way by the guides and the video footage from their GoPro and drones, which you've been watching for the last few minutes on this vlog. You don't actually need to buy any of this on the day. You're sent a link to the website where you can view everything and buy what you want in your own time. We bought the whole lot for just $48, so we thought it was really good value. Overall, our verdict on this was mixed. Not because of the quality of the excursion, as the guides and equipment etc. were great and the scenery was wonderful. If you want to give rafting a go, we would really recommend Alpine Rafting, and they have several other trips they offer on higher grades. But just for us personally, the rapids were probably too much on the tamer side, and we just got a little bit uncomfortable and cold in all of our gear after a while. I think if the rapids had been a little bit rougher, it would have been a bit more thrilling, but then again, too rough and it probably would have been too much. We need to find that sweet spot. Perhaps around grade 2 for the entire run might have suited us personally a little bit better. Something for us to keep in mind if we ever try this again elsewhere. But it was still a really cool experience and something we're really glad we tried. We can now say we've been whitewater rafting. Our plan then was to spend the afternoon back at Emerald Lake, which we'd skipped on our way up to Golden the previous day. But the rain was coming down now and was forecast to stay for the rest of the day. We'd had enough of the cold and wet for the day, and after a busy few days, we gave ourselves an afternoon of chilling out at the hotel and not doing much to rest. We all had some time down in the indoor pool and the hot tub, which was a nice way to relax after the morning on the river. For dinner, we headed to a nearby Indian restaurant we'd seen on the way in called Indian Flavours. The food was okay, service was really good, although the restaurant itself was probably a little basic. I think it was probably more of a takeaway than a restaurant. Still, we had a pretty decent dinner and we headed into town for a quick look. The town of Golden itself seemed really small. From what we could see, it was just one small main street. Nice enough, but not much to keep us here. So we made a quick stop at the supermarket to stock up on snacks and then headed back to the hotel to get some rest. The next day, it was time to check out and head off to Kamloops, but we decided to spend the morning in Golden before leaving. The main reason we wanted to come to Golden at all was for the Skybridge attraction here. This is basically quite similar to the Capilano Suspension Bridge in Vancouver, for those of you familiar with that, but on a much grander scale in terms of the other attractions here. From the stuff we saw online, it looked really cool, so we wanted to spend some time here while we were in the area. Given we'd be visiting early in the day, we booked an early riser ticket for 9 AM entry. This gave us a reduced price for visiting early in the morning. What we hadn't realised and had made a big mistake with is that the early riser ticket limits you to using the attractions only until 11 AM. We thought the discount was to get people there earlier in the day to spread crowds and hadn't appreciated it actually restricts your use of the attractions. We can't find this ticket on their site anymore, so don't know if it's still available, if it wasn't well advertised or if we just missed the terms, but it's something to watch out for. We booked on their site, which like a lot of attractions in the area is through the Banff Jasper collection site, so there were many different types of ticket you could get and combinations with other attractions, so just take your time and choose carefully. Anyway, having arrived at 9 AM and not yet fully realising the restrictions on our ticket, we headed straight over to the Forest Coaster, which was our must-do for the day. The site is laid out either side of a canyon, with attractions on both sides. They're linked by 2 suspension bridges, each of which are one way, so you can't easily go back on yourself once you've crossed over the bridge. You have to do a big loop of the park, so keep that in mind planning your route. The bridges are amazing, offering brilliant views of the canyon below and the mountains around you. They do bounce a lot, so it does feel a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's all very safe. So covering the far side of the park first, where we headed, this is where you've got 3 of the headline attractions. The first is the Canyon Edge Challenge, which is basically a high ropes course, and I'll speak more about that in a moment. The second is the Sky Zipline Launch, a zipline back over the canyon. This looked awesome and it's something we really wanted to do, but we ran out of time because of the ticket that we had. It also would have meant then walking around the park to come and pick up our bags and be able to cross back over the second suspension bridge, so logistically it would have been a bit of a pain. The third attraction is the Rail Rider Mountain Coaster, and it's where we headed first. Because it was early, there weren't any queues yet, so we went straight on. It's a brilliant track, raised up above the ground level. It is quite short, but you do pick up speed pretty well, and there's one really good spot where it's almost like you're going to shoot off the edge of the canyon, which was really fun. But if you prefer to go a bit slower, you're in complete control at all times and can pull back on the handlebars to slow down. Because of the age and height restrictions, Finley rode with Greg, which was fine, and we all really enjoyed it. It's really similar to the Zip World coaster attraction in Wales for anyone who's done that, and you can find that video on our channel as well. We could have gone straight back on, as one advantage of the early riser ticket is its unlimited use, whereby I think a standard ticket only allows one go on each attraction, but we wanted to give something else a try, so we went back to the high ropes course. This was our big mistake. The course takes a good couple of hours if you do several of the routes, so this took us past 11 AM and meant we couldn't then do the zip line. We should have done the zip line first, then come and registered for the high ropes before 11, and we'd have been able to do all three. We didn't realise our mistake until afterwards, and it was too late. The staff didn't know how or if we could upgrade our ticket, so we gave up and unfortunately didn't get to try the zip line. The high ropes course was brilliant. The kids had a great time and loved doing it. There's 4 courses available in varying difficulties. The top one is basically for adults or older kids, and I think you have to prove that you can do 5 pull-ups to enter, as it requires a lot of upper body strength. So we stuck to the others and completed all 3. The courses have loads of different aspects, including little zip lines as well, so we had a really fun few hours here. Having finished that and unable to do the zip line, we headed back over to the other side of the canyon and the rest of the park, enjoying the second bridge on the way. This side of the park has a lot more attractions too, including the giant canyon swing, which looked terrifying and was never on our list, but that's there if that's your thing. There's a climbing wall which looked great, but we couldn't try because of our ticket, and axe throwing, which I don't think Finley, who was 8, was old enough for anyway, so we were planning on skipping that. You are allowed to stay in the park and do things other than the big attractions, even with our ticket. There were several adventure playgrounds which the kids loved, and a little panning for gems area. You basically buy a bag of sand for $10 from the gift shop, which has gems hidden inside, and then you take it to the panning area and sift out the sand to find your gems. This seemed really popular and our kids loved it, so for what works out at £5 a bag, we didn't think it was bad at all. Next to here and the playground, there's the Village Grill, which was a good spot to get some lunch, with burgers and fries and that sort of thing, with loads of picnic benches, so we had our lunch here. Again, we got bitten to bits by the bugs, so bring your insect repellent. Golden seemed really bad for this compared to all other spots on this trip. After another run around the playground and a quick look at the gift shop, it was about 1 PM. We'd done everything we could with our ticket and we knew we had a decent drive over to Kamloops, so we decided to call it a day and head off. The overall verdict from the 4 of us was that this was brilliant. We really loved it here. It's a really good park, definitely worth the visit, with enough to fill pretty much a whole day. We were here from 9 until 1 and still hadn't done the zip line, climbing wall, axe throwing or the canyon swing, so you can easily fill a whole day here. The only downside was the ticket we bought, which limited our time on the attractions, which was a shame, but we'll know to be a bit more careful next time. Entry came to $260 or around £150 for a day out, which probably isn't too bad for a family of 4, certainly for attractions as unique as these. It was something we definitely recommend, and the kids said was one of their highlights of the whole trip. And just on Golden, more generally, we'd had a lovely time here. It's probably fair to say it's not quite the same level as Banff or Canmore in terms of tourism, but we enjoyed a lovely few days here, and there's definitely more than enough to do to keep you entertained. There's also a gondola up into the mountains that you can go to, which goes to the Kicking Horse Mountain Resort, and I think it also has a resident bear you can see. We didn't look into this too much given that we've already done a few gondola rides on this trip already, but it was something that was recommended to us as something fun to do. And then there's the Northern Lights Wolf Centre that we also saw advertised, so there's a few things here you can do to easily fill 3 or 4 days if you really wanted. Moving on from Golden and the Skybridge, from here we got straight on the highway and onto Kamloops. It's about a 4-hour drive from Golden, but it's incredibly scenic with mountains, hills and lakes the whole way. You can spot wildlife as we saw numerous warnings about bears and elk in the road, and we saw a couple of eagles on the way too, so it's a lovely stretch to drive. We arrived a bit after 5 p.m. at the Delta Hotel Kamloops, which is in downtown and pretty centrally located. We'd booked just one night here for £160 through Expedia, which I'll link below, as it had good reviews, had a good location and seemed reasonably priced for one night. The hotel has a parking lot out back and underground. We were advised to park it underground if possible. We got the impression they do have some issues with crime here, so we parked it underground like recommended to be safe. The hotel though was lovely, with very nice service, a lovely lobby, a brilliant rooftop pool, and the rooms were really modern and spacious. We were upgraded to a mountain view room which was nice, and we had 2 big beds, a nice bathroom, loads of space for the luggage, and it was all very clean, well maintained and quiet. Perfect for a night stopover. We'd asked at reception for their recommendations of somewhere to eat. The hotel does have a restaurant, but it was a bit fancy and pricey for what we wanted after a long day. So we took their suggestion and headed to the Frickin' Frack restaurant down the road. I don't think there are too many places to eat here. It didn't seem all that busy downtown, but this restaurant was great for what we wanted. A good menu, good food with options for the kids and really well priced. It's a bar as well, and with it being a Saturday night, I can imagine it got a bit more rowdy later on, but we were gone by 7 p.m, so it was perfect for us. Then there was enough time for an hour or so at the rooftop pool as the sun went down. It was a lovely way to finish the day, enjoying cooling off and then chilling in the hot tub. It's a lovely little spot overlooking the main street, and they have a bar here too which serves snacks, so a nice area to spend some time. The next morning we were up early and on our way to Vancouver, so we didn't see a lot of Kamloops. From what we saw though, it didn't feel like there was much more to see or do, at least in the downtown area anyway. I think on the outskirts there is a bit more to do, up in the mountains etc, but it felt very much like a stopover town on the way to Vancouver. Still, it was fine for us, the hotel was great and we'd recommend to stay here if you're doing the same and stopping over. We had no complaints. So that brings us right up to Vancouver, which I'll cover next week, and which will be the last in this series of vlogs covering our Alaska and Canada trip. If there's anything you want to ask, or anything we missed about Golden, Kamloops, or any part of the trip, please just let us know in the comments below. Likewise, if you liked this video, we would really appreciate if you gave it a like. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or any other tips, please let us know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.